Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on February the 5th, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout. I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Hey, good, Robert. Looking forward to today's episode. Lots of stuff to cover, and it's Super Bowl week. But we won't talk football.
Yeah, we won't talk football. But I know this is maybe your is this more important to you than like a holiday week, like a Christmas week?
No, not at all. But it is a good excuse to have barbecue and wings and guacamole. And as one of the popular shirts floating around Kansas City, because I am a Chiefs fan, full disclosure, is popular shirt right now is I'm just here for Taylor and the snacks. So it's probably how a lot of people feel about football these days, since the Chiefs have become that sort of team people like to not like.
To be in it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, I digress. But how are you?
I'm doing good. Been enjoying this weather. And kind of, I had somebody joke the other day when I was out in public that maybe spring is here early. I'm thinking it's probably a little early to declare victory on winter at this point, because it could come back in a quick vengeance. But early February and being in the 70s is a little odd, at least in Atlanta. So, for sure. Anyway, we'll get started here. We have a lot of wide-ranging topics today. Sometimes it seems to be all about lawsuits or all about ETFs. Now we have a good amount of other things, so it makes this a little more fun. Our first topics is there's 36 million crypto tokens in existence. And this is immediately totally caught me off guard. Like, I had paid attention for a while how many tokens there were, and it was like 20,000. And if obviously listeners can't see, there's a graph that I'm looking at, and it basically, this large or gigantic number is coming from meme tokens. The vast majority of it launched on Solana and a couple other networks, but it's up and to the right. It is literally going vertical. It's definitely like logarithmic at this point, and it's just a whole bunch of trash. It's like this is the gambling side of crypto. These are all, in some sense, you can think of as different slot machines that you can play within the crypto casino. So,
well, this is all fodder for those who are anti-crypto in a sense, right? Because you don't have to look very hard to see that the SEC, even with a new set of leaders or a new commissioner coming in anyway, there still are cases, right, where they're going after folks who pump and dump coins and obviously commit, whether it's securities or not. We won't get into that debate, but there is a lot of crap out there. On comparison, I think we talked about this before we went live. The decentralized nature of this whole space, allows for somebody sitting at home that understands the technology and understands how to launch a token can pretty much spin up and launch a token, a meme coin. That's not the case with a publicly traded company. So by comparison, there were about 8,000 stocks, publicly traded companies in the US in the mid 90s. You know what that number is today?
Smaller number.
It's not more, I'll tell you that. It's right around 4,000. So in a sense, there's a lot of forces for why that's the case, but it's there's a lot more private companies electing to stay private. That's a lot of different reasons for that. But this crypto space is obviously going the other way. In the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think this number is my question.
I mean, I kind of just want to gravitate to using the word infinity. I don't understand I don't understand what stops it, because even if the U.S. has regulation, it doesn't mean that it doesn't stop outside the borders. And if anything, maybe we get regulations that kind of loosely govern these gambling tokens for all intents and purposes. I don't know. It's
because a lot of these don't have any liquidity. There's no market for them. If you issue them or buy them, there's likely very little trading activity. So it truly is a speculator world.
Absolutely. And we mentioned last week in the episode, I did not have Trump launching his meme coin on my 2025 bingo card, or his wife for that matter. So
you got two.
I got two of the, and basically that is part of this list.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of, anytime someone has an idea what could be a meme, that the next great things, I'm sure it takes you all about 5 minutes to launch one of these things.
Well,
And
I saw that Musk's dad is involved. Now he wasn't behind launching it, but there's a group that approached Elon Musk's dad, and they're creating the Musk token. I don't know what it's called, but it's another example of this is, and on the website for the coin, apparently they reference him wanting to go to Mars and all these other advances. But yeah, it's opportunistic and capitalism, good or bad. It's you just hope that the argument or the case that we've been making to talk our own book a little bit is commercial utility. Often these tokens that represent the 99.9% of this 36 million really don't have any commercial utility.
Yeah, and if anything, regulations come. Maybe it doesn't make these meme ones go away, but it actually allows the ones trying to do, in our opinion, real work to be defined differently.
Yeah.
And then they have the rules to be able to do what they want to do. And I think, we would have less to talk about when it comes to meme tokens at that point, because they are getting more of the news, and unfortunately, right now. So
yeah.
Anyways, on the other end of the spectrum, you couldn't be more serious if you're talking to the Jerome Powell, and he was quoted as in his last press conference. It just makes me shake my head. That
Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Yeah, Fed Chair Jerome Powell. That banks are perfectly able to serve crypto customers, and he had this look in his face, and just the demeanor that hasn't it always been this way?
Yeah.
There is an ongoing investigation by I forget it's the House or the Senate Republicans. There's a committee that's trying to investigate Checkpoint 2.0 and trying to figure out who the actors were in that, trying to get rid of them, maybe punish them, all that stuff. So it kind of smacked you in the face with his comment, perfectly able. Right. If I had free time, I would like to go down the street and try to apply for a bank account for the crypto fund and see how that goes. I don't think it's perfectly able right now, would be my guess. So
yeah, I think there's a little bit of it seems like whitewashing here or something. I don't know what that's the right term, but 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, you wouldn't have heard a public official in the government talking this openly, and he's not the only one, but about the fact that crypto and the regulated institutions can effectively start to dance and get married again. It's like where were we the last 4 years when we could have had more constructive dialogue to prevent some of the blowups that happen where investors actually were harmed or banks actually did have to shut down. So anyway, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback. Hopefully this is the beginning of a wave of what we'll see is work between regulators, government, the private sector, and ultimately customers, just to create lower cost ways for customers to do crypto banking or crypto investing with regulated institutions. It's gonna, I think, ultimately be better for all of us in the end. It's just going to be messy to get there.
Unfortunately. So anyways, on to maybe some better news potentially here. So the SEC has moved quicker than people were expecting, or they had to, for that matter, when it came to Canary Funds had filed for a Litecoin ETF. The 19B-4 filing has been acknowledged by the SEC, which actually starts the clock. Basically, it's in 21 days. Generally, my understanding is that once you go from initial filing to maybe getting one launch, it's like a 240-day clock a lot of times. This was greatly accelerated in this case. And not to say there's anything special about this ETF. It's Litecoin. No one really cares about Litecoin. So I'm not even sure why we have an ETF for it. It may fall into the ETF bucket, in my opinion, where there's a Dogecoin one been filed for. So I was like, why does that even need to be a thing? And I saw some commentary around that maybe these meme coin ETFs are just for degenerate gamblers that want to do it through the brokerage account. Which I guess makes some sense. So anyways, yeah, it's cool to see the SEC moving quickly on something. Typically, they like to take the absolute last second.
You have a future in newspapers or magazines because you wrote a hook here. SEC and moving quickly, all in one sentence or one headline. You don't often hear that. Often it's a delay or it's there's not a ruling or there's some
Right.
extension. So yeah, the fact that there is movement. I mean, this was one of my predictions in the letter that we put out
Mhm.
in January for 2025, or less predictions, I would say, to clarify, more things I was going to watch in 25. And one of the things was, would we see this increased number of applications and ultimately like approval of ETFs, the indexation of the crypto or digital asset space? Is it really going to happen, or will it be mostly Bitcoin and Ethereum? And it does appear, based on the applications that got filed on Gensler's final hour in office and what's transpired over the last few weeks, and especially in the first, call it month of the Trump administration, that there is definitely a lot of tailwind, for the industry, and I would say there's a lot of opportunity to strike, if you will, while the proverbial iron is hot, and it seems that these shores are doing that.
Yeah, makes total
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. So, kind of along the same lines, our next topic, Kraken brings back staking for U.S. customers. I, again, would have not had guessed this was going to happen before we got regulations. And not because I think they're doing anything wrong, but because literally roughly 12 to 18 months ago, Kraken is an exchange in the U.S., kind
Yeah.
of competitor to Coinbase, for those that don't know. But they had a settlement with the SEC for their staking product where basically they said U.S. customers can no longer use it. And they paid like a $40 million fine. And then everyone seemed, I guess, relatively happy at that point, or
Appeased for a
content.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, boom, new administration, new SEC thought leadership, and it's fine to bring it back. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think that they probably wanted to come back into staking of U.S. customers for some time, but I think it's just a shifting of the political winds, right? And now that there's a new sheriff in town,
Yeah.
as they say,
So,
there's going to be different activities going on. So I think we're going to see more of this. I mean, the connection between what's happening in DC, what's happening in the boardroom and strategy room and management decisions in crypto, those are so interconnected at this point in terms of
yeah.
the movement. And frankly, it might be across all industries a lot more than we maybe are talking about on this show, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of industries, I think, suffering from, I don't want to say it's whiplash in a bad way, but it's just so much is happening with executive orders and the new administration and new policies.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to get their arms around it, but
Yeah, and it's a fire hose right now, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a lot. My last favorite piece, when I was reading this news about the Kraken, so I read it as a tweet, is where I first saw it, and this is a pretty big account that does kind of like Wall Street type news, and the Kraken's Twitter account replied, "We're so back." And I'm
we're
like, that's
so
such
back.
Twitter. We're such a
Yeah,
that's such a Twitter thing to do.
yeah, it is.
Um,
Yeah, we're
in
so
crypto for
back.
that matter. So, anyways, pretty cool. So our next topic is obviously will involve the SEC. So Grayscale has had their trust. These
Yeah,
trusts predate the ETFs,
right.
and it was something for private placement for accredited investors for the longest time, so you could invest in crypto. The most famous one was their Bitcoin one that did convert into their Bitcoin ETF. They have filed the same type of application to convert their XRP ETF XRP trust
Trust.
into an ETF.
Yeah.
So not tons of news here beyond it's just kind of showing more momentum kind of going. And I would guess that they wouldn't have filed that if they didn't think the ETF applications that are already in place have a decently good chance of getting through. So
I know it's a private vehicle, this XRP trust,
yep,
that's sponsored by Grayscale, but any idea the size of it?
it's not big. I think it's I'm gonna say it's $15 million. It's
Yeah.
basically peanuts.
Yeah, so on the scale of an ETF, I mean, we're talking like minuscule relative to not just the Bitcoin ETFs, but even
Right.
some of the Ethereum ETFs that haven't had as much success and gotten as much traction. But
Right.
XRP's been in the news a lot, and
Mhm.
we've talked about them and Ripple
Mhm.
quite a bit with the lawsuit with the SEC. So
Mhm.
yeah, it again, I think this whole idea of the indexation and the ETF, that's happening outside of crypto. It's not like ETFs and crypto is the only conversation. There is a huge movement away just in general in asset management, and has been for some time now, really, since ETFs were launched. But if you just look at the size of the iShares platform, and you look at platforms like Invesco and Vanguard and others, investors by and large, are looking for low cost ways to get just two types of exposure: index exposure to a particular index, the MSCI, S&P, or very targeted thematic or very tactical type exposures, which would be something like a Bitcoin, and do it in a low cost way. And advisors and those that are, helping people invest, or just do-it-yourselfers, are looking for the lowest cost way and most efficient way from a tax perspective to get that exposure. And the ETF is winning.
The ETF, with the small asterisks, in the sense that Grayscale's ETFs are never low fee.
They're not, right?
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what their strategy is here, because they did something very different. Basically reduced it only 20% from 2.5% down to 2%,
right?
Versus 20 to 25 basis points that the others were fighting at. So it will be fascinating to kind of see how this one.
And and on the scale of things, like when you look at some of these index ETFs, they're single basis points per year in management fees, and some of them obviously are much more. But yeah, your average mutual fund with all the fees associated with it. It's not a business that's going away tomorrow, but certainly a lot more active managers are looking at other ways to grow, and it seems like it's happening in ETFs, index products, and alternatives or private vehicles.
Indeed. So next topic, kind of a bit of a update or follow up on kind of the state of Bitcoin reserves, or the concept of them at the state level. We can kind of touch on the U.S. one a little bit too, but really this is about the states. So there's 14 states that have had a bill at least introduced that is specifically for a Bitcoin reserve in their state. Some of them haven't left committee, some of them have left committee, but nothing has gotten to a floor for a vote yet. Again, will a state beat the U.S. to any sort of reserve if the U.S. has one? It does seem likely. I'm guessing one of these states kind of gets it going pretty quickly, and things just move quicker at a state level than they will in Washington. So I think really the real question is there a state that comes along and it's a basket versus just a single asset? I think that's the ones that I would find more fascinating. So.
Well, I had an idea, and might as well just put the idea out there. Why don't the two of us go to our legislators and propose that Georgia, where we live, sponsor a basket, index of cryptos for the state of Georgia? Talk about, because we are such a pro-business state, or market ourselves as such. We're home to many, many Fortune 1000 companies, so there's a very proactive business lobby. We want to be business friendly, and fintech and technology, particularly in areas like payments and payments infrastructure and other things, that's very big in Atlanta. So I'm just saying there might be a receptive audience.
It's not crazy. Of all the states that kind of surprised me, Alabama is on one of those 14 states. I would have felt they might have been a laggard, but it's they've beat Georgia. Georgia is not on the list. So
I know. Yeah, I'm just saying. So stay tuned, folks.
In all my free time, I can go down there and lobby.
Right. The broader and more importantly, of these states, do you get a sense for what you've seen on social media, Twitter, X, that these are, I guess, being taken more seriously by more of the legislators than the folks that are sponsoring these bills to actually look at them? Or is this, again, I asked this last week to some extent, is this more headlines and about press?
I think it's the latter. To me, it seems like a Me Too, or it seems like you're trying to front run the federal government. I don't understand it. I understand what they're doing. I don't understand why they're doing it. So I don't know.
Not enough. Yeah, not enough detail yet. Well, the
Yeah.
thing is, I saw yesterday or the day before, President Trump announced in one of his press conferences that he had signed an executive order to create a sovereign wealth fund
He did. Yeah.
for the United States. That's happened, right?
That has happened. Correct. There's
Okay.
nothing
Yeah.
in it yet, but yes.
Right, but it's kind of along the same line of, creating a reserve or a stockpile of some
Mhm.
precious asset or some strategically important asset, right? When you think about Alaska, I think they have one of the sovereign wealth funds because of all the oil
Right.
and gas and energy assets there. And I'm just curious, like, if that becomes something that the states start to think about, like, what are
Mhm.
our state specific assets that we would contribute into a sovereign wealth fund,
Right.
whether it's attracting businesses to set up and do,
Yeah.
you know,
I I
crypto in their backyard or what?
Yeah, I briefly saw at least a clip from the press, or it's me, I guess Trump was sitting at his desk signing that executive order, and
Yeah,
the two gentlemen, Bissett from the Treasury
Secretary of Treasury and
and
Howard
then
Lutnick.
and Lutnick were there.
Yeah,
I think they're
Secretary of Commerce.
co-heading this sovereign wealth fund, whatever
Okay.
that means.
Yeah.
And Trump literally was floating the idea that maybe the first thing that gets put into it is the U.S. buys TikTok. And I'm like, ugh.
Oh wow.
Like,
Okay.
or he does it with some other wealthy people. He's just like kind of spitballing, but I'm like, he's
Sure.
being very Trump in that moment. But I'm
Yeah.
just like, of all the things that we could put in there to begin with, to kind of set a signal, it's TikTok.
Right. Right.
So, anyways,
Yeah,
I'm
I'd be curious to
more
see,
critical.
see what if that goes anywhere, because there are a number of prominent countries. Norway's got a huge sovereign wealth fund. Obviously, a number of Middle Eastern countries
Mhm.
have big sovereign wealth funds. Where they invest in a lot of their oil
Yeah.
riches. So yeah, lots to think through and discuss. This next one is going to be fun to talk about. You did some research on who has made the cover of
Yeah.
Forbes magazine,
Yeah. And
and
recently,
next is
Michael
Michael
Saylor.
Saylor of
Yeah.
MicroStrategy.
I forget if it's actually out yet or it's coming soon. I don't know. He's on the cover nonetheless.
Yeah,
And you know, I'm sure there's been a vast majority of people that have been on the cover, and most of them have probably been good at what they've done for the world. But just kind of like zooming back out, you can look at you had Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos was on the cover.
Theranos, right,
The
right.
fraud that she had dealt with or was running there. You had SBF on the cover. You've had
From FTX.
Adam Newman from WeWork on there.
Yeah.
So probably a mixed bag with him. And then you have Saylor. And you also had Sam Altman. So the jury's probably still out from him. He's OpenAI.
Yeah.
There's probably very divisive opinions on him nonetheless, but it's a I don't know.
Well,
I
it
just
is a media asset. I sell a little bit of media. So what I have learned is, you are trying to sell ads and get clicks, and that is what you're doing. I'm not saying that they don't have good journalists.
right.
Take nothing away from our now colleagues, we could say, our in the journalism business we are, but they are obviously trying to sell magazines. And what I was probably young and naive at the time, but I used to think there's only one cover of Forbes, like the same cover everywhere, and that's not the case.
No.
They have covers. They have Forbes Asia, they have Forbes Mexico, Forbes Middle East. So, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of debate that goes on as to who to put on the cover, but he's having a moment, right?
He's having a moment, and I'm very conflicted on him, and we've probably talked about this in the past, but I fear he becomes the boogeyman for Bitcoin, because what he's doing with MicroStrategy and just kind of how he's going about that. I just don't. It doesn't feel healthy to me. I don't have an ability to put my finger on what is the problem right now, admittedly, but it just something feels off here, and I guess my ultimate worry is it actually affects all of crypto in some way. So we don't need another. I'm not saying he's doing any sort of fraud, because I don't think it's the case. We don't need another SBF.
Right. Somebody built up that
Right.
they're
It is
almost like the Messiah.
Absolutely.
And they've got the golden touch, and they can do no wrong, and they sort of walk on water. Not to use that analogy too much. I don't want to go too far with it, but the idea, the media loves to build this up, and the media also loves to tear it down. So there's like the hero villain interplay, and it's controversial, which is perfect if you're trying to promote a magazine. I think that what you know, you have to dig in like anything. You got to dig in and sort of understand what's the backstory. And every time they go to raise money for purchasing more Bitcoin, they seem to have people lined up at the door, you know,
Right.
that want to give them capital. And this is not individual investors giving them $100 at a time. I mean, these are institutional offerings of, you know, debt and
They're doing debt
equity
offerings now to buy
managed
Bitcoin.
by institutional investment banks, right? They're in the business of making fees.
Right.
There's disclosures, right? But yeah, it's people are doing their research and digging in and understanding kind of why to get involved. So yeah, but I do have that same concern. Like, we're not hearing enough about, again, as is always the skeptic in me, we're not hearing enough about the killer use case of crypto like we are with AI. And like,
Mm,
you know, we see with AI. And again, there's a lot of questions in AI about when is enterprise adoption going to happen at scale.
right.
There's been a lot of consumer adoption, but as we saw with, is it DeepSeek or DeepThink?
Deep sync. Yeah.
When you make something available to people at a low cost and it works, people are going to use it.
Right.
And so we, you know, now you
Without
can't
reading the
even
terms of use, they will.
exactly. They don't
Yep.
care about the privacy. They don't care about
Right.
that their data is taken and sold. They don't care about
Mhm.
all that. They just want something that makes life a little bit more fun, a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier. They don't care about their data. Maybe they should. Maybe Leslie Stahl will do a piece on 60 Minutes. Who cares? They don't
Right.
care.
Yep.
It's about efficiency and you know, especially if it's free. So we'll I don't know. We'll have to see. I just I really do hope that you're wrong in the sense of like
Right.
who are the people that got on Forbes that didn't turn out to be real.
Right.
Um, because crypto needs, you know, needs some
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
And I no, I didn't say Bitcoin. I said crypto, you know, which
Mhm.
includes Bitcoin.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll
We'll
put that one
see.
on pause and
So
see
the
how.
Forbes cover is coming out. We just
Yeah.
sold them a few more magazines because people are going to go pick it up. But I guess the
Yeah.
jury's still out. We'll have to see where it goes.
Yeah. So our next topic, we probably can safely say that the folks at Tether are not as much on the up and up as Michael Saylor is. I think that Michael is probably, maybe he's making bad choices potentially, but like he is not doing anything illegal. I think there's been in the past where Tether has potentially done stuff that has been shady. Again, we're not going to dig it all up again, but their audits are produced by their internal folks. That's not an audit.
Yeah.
So their business is crazy profitable though, like $13 billion in profit last year. And, sometimes you'll look at these things on like on a per employee basis, like
Yeah.
they have only 150 employees. So they're making just shy of $87 million per employee.
Wow.
Apple is doing just shy of $600,000. Microsoft's 330, like peanuts compared to what Tether's able to do. So
Yeah, they have good unit economics, as they say. So tell us quickly, what does Tether do? I mean, I know
oh
that
yes,
we in
right.
crypto spend a lot of time batting these same names around, but
Yeah.
catch us up on what they do and what's
Tether,
their business.
they have some stable coins. Their biggest one, most famous and most successful by far is USDT.
Mhm.
It is referred to as Tether, but yes, USDT. And
Yeah.
it's one-to-one backed by the dollar. The reason why they aren't allowed to be in Europe, they're probably not going to be allowed in the US once we have stablecoin regulations, is theirs is not fully backed only by what would be like treasuries and
Right.
actual hard cash. It
Highly
is,
liquid,
yeah,
very
I think roughly
redeemable assets. Yeah.
10, maybe even 20%. I forget the number offhand, is backed by Bitcoin, corporate bonds, other stuff
Mhm.
that's more volatile. So it's
Yeah.
interesting way. I mean, they're based in the Caymans, so they've been able to kind of do what they do because of that. But they are moving to El Salvador, which I don't know if that's an upgrade or downgrade from a perception standpoint, but
Right.
nonetheless, they are moving. So
Yeah. Well, on the headline, the
yeah.
most profitable per employee company, at least that we're aware of in the world,
Mhm.
certainly in
Yeah.
crypto.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything of scale, especially when you're talking about billions of dollars, I'm sure they're in a league of their own at this point.
Yeah.
So, um, volatility. It was crazy this last weekend.
Yeah.
I um I was admittedly outside. My brother texted me and kind of brought it to my attention about what was going on. I was enjoying the great weather, and crypto, in response to the tariff stuff that happened, I mean, it's all
Right.
tied together. Started selling off, and then you have these leverage traders. They get liquidated. It continues that sell pressure, and there was some tokens that were down 30-40% at one point on a wick within the same day candle.
Yeah.
Use XRP as an example, is way down. It had $1 of movement within the same day of candle for a token that is at $2.40. It was down at 170. It started Friday at like 315. So
Do you this is like market commentary question time now. So going into the weekend, the threat of tariffs was hanging out there. Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico. They responded and said they will retaliate, and we're into our first trade war. Meanwhile, in the backdrop, Rubio's going to negotiate with Panama to try to get the Panama Canal back. I mean, there was just a lot going on. We get to Sunday, tariffs are put out there. They're going to start. And then all of a sudden, we saw the market react.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that there was a whisper, hey, let's back down, or were there actual real concessions made on trade policy with Canada and Mexico?
The only thing I heard come out of these, both Canada and for the Mexico piece, was, and maybe this is all Trump wanted, I have no idea, was about fentanyl, right? Trying to block the flow of it into the U.S.
Yeah.
I did hear some commentary about like how he's so early in this presidency that like he may not mind in some ways to take a few like hits to the market if he can actually get somewhere with it.
Right.
Versus he's not worried about re-election. It's not near the midterms. It's kind of insulated a little bit right now.
Right.
And in a week from now, everyone's going to forget about it, assuming it all kind of.
Yeah. I mean, he did say there's going to be some short-term pain for some Americans, but in order to address what he believes are just looming huge deficits with just about every trading partner.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, look, the whole run up to his being in office after the election was what was his trade policy going to be, and would we see tariffs? And it was tariff every day on all the news networks and business, as usual, outside of just talking about tariffs. And then we saw the market, including crypto, say, "Huh, not so sure how we feel about that," and it just kind of went away. So, not to minimize the importance of addressing fentanyl and the importance of illicit drugs coming over, our borders, but yeah, it might be the beginning of what we expect to see and will see in the cycle of news, which is, what's a threat versus what's actually going to transpire, and the gap between those two things could sometimes be hours or days, and sometimes just never materializes. But the threat gets more headlines than the actual, news itself.
Yeah, for sure. And to put some numbers around this volatility across the crypto market, so liquidations I kind of referred to happened.
Yeah.
It was first reported it was around $2 billion in liquidations. But as I started digging in, I found a gentleman, his name is Ben Zhao. He runs an exchange out of Asia, Bybit. He was saying how on their exchange alone, they had 2.1 billion in liquidations.
Wow.
But for whatever reason, it wasn't being reported correctly out to CoinGlass, which is kind of like a website to kind of aggregate this data. And it was aggregated at 1/7 of the value, which he assumed is also happening for all the other providers. His assumption is the total liquidations were around 10 billion across the entire
crypto ecosystem.
So,
wow,
that's a lot of money.
And we saw Bitcoin get to 104,000 around there, and then pull back. I don't know where it's at today, but it was at 97.
It's 97.
Yeah.
I mean, it even dipped to almost. Well, I know at least 94. I don't know how low it went. But yeah, it's still. Nothing structurally has changed. I don't think we're still in this bull market, and we should be. In some ways, we're just waiting for a catalyst. I think the market was waiting for the crypto ETF. It wasn't as specific as I guess the market wanted, and we're just kind of more in a wait and see approach right now. So
yeah, my sense from the market is it's hard to get super excited about talk of legislation, because we all know. People that pay attention to politics and watch what's happening in crypto it's moves at a pretty slow pace, right? So I'm hopeful and optimistic that whatever legislation we do get, even if it takes a little bit longer for the industry, is, somewhat of a game changer and step change in the direction, and likely will be in stablecoins to tee up our final headline.
Yeah. There you go. And we don't have tons of meat on this bone to talk about, but Senator Bill Haggerty said he will introduce legislation that creates a framework for stablecoins. Basically, this has been long suspected to be the first building block. Basically getting legislation in place for stablecoins. I don't know if it's going to follow the same format that what we see for MiCA in Europe, where basically that's why Tether can't be there, because they're not backed exactly how they want to see these things structured. I'd imagine you can't have an algorithmic stablecoin anymore. So there'll be some stuff that comes out as more details are released. But I was excited just to see this headline and seeing another senator talk about that you normally wouldn't see talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
6 months ago, he was not in the list of people working on crypto legislation. So.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, Senator Haggerty will have some young energetic aides that are willing to pull all-nighters to
get it done.
work the back channels and get some legislation in motion, at least some draft language that we can start to see and put our hands around.
Yep. Sounds good. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.